I don't know why you picked this workshop, but I'm glad that you did. I'm hoping it's going to be a good time with you guys. I saw what I was up against, and we weren't sure if there was going to be a room full or a room full of nobody. So thank you for coming out here. My name is Jeff McLaughlin. I'm on staff here at First Baptist Orlando, and I work with our young adults ministry. And so that's I have singles and I have marrieds. So would you pray for me at some point? Because that's an interesting world. This is the fourth church that I've served at. I've been on staff here about 2 years, and so I'm going to find out in a few minutes where you guys come from and what size church is. And, I want to hear everything about you because that'll custom tailor where we go from this moment on. But I've served in small churches, I've served in medium-sized churches, and I've served in big churches, and have had to learn to be resourceful in all three. Just because we're in a big church now, I can tell you we're in a season in this church where we're making everything stretch. Okay, we're pinching pennies and learning how to do that, and it's culture shock for some of our guys because this has been the only stop for them, and so they've not served at small churches and medium-sized churches. So I know what it's like to be told you have this, and to really have to go back and read that story about feeding 5,000 with fishes and loaves and saying, God, do you think you can do that again today? Because that would, help me right now. So if that's where you come from, I have great compassion for you. I appreciate those types of ministries, and I will just tell you this, even being in a church like this, I haven't forgotten my roots. Okay, very important. So don't forget yours, whatever your journey takes you. Here's why Marcus picked me. All the other pastors right now are on vacation, okay? So I'm the only one here. But I'm leaving this afternoon for mine, and I'll be gone through next week. But stayed just to be here with you guys today because I believe in this and I believe in Marcus. And I want to walk you through my journey that brought me here because me being here the last 2 years, I've learned, a ton of things about food service ministry because no church I ever served at had a quote-unquote dedicated food service ministry. Food service ministry was the local number for the Domino's. Okay, you with me? And then the few ladies in the church that knew how to cook and would be willing to do their their penance once a year to make a cool meal for a church-wide gathering. The things that we do at this church are absolutely incredible. I'm never so amazed. I do weddings, do a lot of weddings these days. Told Jerry a couple weeks ago there was a wedding that I did that they just hit it out of the park. I came to this reception and went, man, this is like going to a 5-star hotel right here. They served me in singles ministry. Actually, I'll save that for later because I'm going to tell you about all the things that they did for me. But here's where I was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was finishing up a 7-year tenure at a church a little bit north of here. That was a medium-sized church, and I was a student pastor. The church had gone through some budget issues and everything, and my position wasn't cut. It was just time for me to go. But I'd watched the church kind of transition from being in an affluent area where money was just rolling. We had money to do anything that we wanted, and then in the latter years, we didn't have that. So much, and so I was extra resourceful, as a guy that came in here, but also struggling in my ministry call, knowing that I had spent now 10 years in student ministry, and it was time to move on, but I didn't know what to. So an opportunity came up for me to leave that last church and to come and intern here. Now at the time, I was married almost 10 years, and I have two young daughters and then now a 12-week-old son, and so I know what it's like to not get paid a whole lot to do things in ministry. I still don't. I especially wasn't getting it then, and I came here and took intern pay, lost a flock, lost influence, lost the freedom of scheduling. I could walk on water at the last place. Some of you guys know what it's like to transition from one place to another. You walked on water there because everybody saw the miracles that you worked, and then you came to the new place, and you were just another name. You were just the next person in line for a position. So that was me in 2011, and one of the first things that they asked us to do as pastoral interns here, our internship program here is more than just cleaning toilets. I think I probably did some of that too, but here they allow our pastoral interns to be a part of everything. Every meeting, every inner circle, this is just amazing that in the course of a year our interns get to do a lot of things that most people would dream of doing at a church of this size. In fact, we have ministry leaders that are excluded from some of the things that those guys get to do, so they really get a full taste of what ministry looks like here. But one of the first things that they asked us to do was to go and meet 7 or 8 of the pastors on our staff and find out what they do. Okay, now I was the only guy they'd ever had at the time that had ever had any kind of church ministry experience. Most people who did this kind of internship had similar family situations, but they were coming out of the business world. They were coming out of places where, just looking to explore call into ministry. And so for me, I knew what pastors did. I knew the kind of lives that they lived. I knew the kind of craziness of schedules. I knew the kind of resources they had to work with. And so I wasn't saying that this was beneath me or anything, but I kind of been around this block and I knew what I could expect. I didn't know what I was going to find out when I started to explore. But I'm also an overachiever, and so 8 was not enough for me. We had a whole lot more than 8 people working on this staff, 8 pastors and ministry leaders, and I figured, well, there's a chance that I'm going to stay on staff here beyond this year. And even regardless, I'm here for a year. And a lot of ministry and a lot of things can happen in a year. So I want to know more than just 8 people. Because I don't want to just know the 8 people that everybody sees and everybody thinks is important, because I've worked at churches before and I know who the real people are that get things done. Amen?
Amen.
I trust that you guys are a big part of that. If every one of you are, just show of hands, everybody here works in food services ministry, correct? You have some oversight. Okay. I want to make sure I know my audience here. So I went and I started meeting people, on our staff. Started with pastors, and I called up Marcus White one day. So Marcus, give me half an hour of your time, and I would love, which by the way that's limited. Marcus doesn't have a whole lot of time. Marcus is the guy that does, I think he wears every hat under this, yeah, I see you back there. I'm just blowing you up right now, man. So I called Marcus up and I said, let's meet. I want to get to know you and what you do. I've already seen some of the fruit of it. I've seen the cool things our food service ministry kind of does around here. But I want to know your heart. I want to know what you're all about. And you have to understand that this would have been May or June of 2011, just a few months earlier. Our church had been given this gift / responsibility called $5.5 million pledged over the course of a year to fight homelessness in Central Florida. So this place was crawling with outreach opportunities. I mean, a bomb had been dropped in our lap that we weren't ready for in a lot of ways. I mean, God was ready for us to do some things, but we hadn't quite caught up, at that point. And so a lot of things were unfolding by the day in terms of outreach that we just didn't know what we were doing. And a lot of those outreach opportunities, like so often happens in a church, became things where we were giving people money and helping things out, but really not solving a long-term need of moving people towards sustainability. And then I met Marcus. And in the middle of that summer, Marcus had a thing going down. What did you call that with the interns when they came here? And they came in with a Marriott program. What was that thing called?
It was just that. It was a program of I can't remember the name exactly.
Jobs partnership?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor. We have to think of creative sermon titles. So we create gimmicks like this.
It was like that.
It was what?
It wasn't jobs partnership, but it was like that.
Okay. So Marcus had a group of people in that summer that basically were given an opportunity to walk through a program working with the food services ministry, and if they completed that program, they were given a guaranteed job with Marriott, correct?
Yep.
And I'm watching this going, I'm seeing the people that we're ministering to. I'm seeing the people that are a part of this program. These people are given an opportunity. I mean, they were coming from low-income situations, even low education in some cases, and were being given tools and moved towards jobs and moved towards sustainability. And I'm going, that is one of the coolest things that I've ever done. And nobody talked about it around here. And so I remember sitting down with Marcus going, I mean, it wasn't because it was ignored. It's just we had a lot of things going on. And I remember sitting down with Marcus and saying, Marcus, that's about the coolest thing that I've ever heard of. Again, being somebody that's worked in ministry, being somebody that's spent money and spent time and resources, investing in problems here and not seeing a whole lot of long-term fruit from them, that is something, you're actually changing lives here. This is a good thing. We ought to be talking about something like this. And we connected right from the start. Right from that moment, I think Marcus and I had a connection. We understood each other's ministry hearts. I just came to respect him wholeheartedly, and he just began to see just the joy and the excitement of what he was doing. So he kind of figured some things out about me, and we've been on this journey ever since. Where maybe this is the best way of putting it. When you work with people you love, you want to partner with them more often than others. Are you with me?
Yep.
There are people in your church that you love when they call you up and say, "Can we do this?" I mean, you want to make those things happen. There's other people, you'll screen that call. Okay, with me? Of course. It's all right. We're going to have confession and healing time here. I'm not telling anybody. I won't tell your senior pastor. I want you to see now what I do as a staff member here, so that you can know every area that our food service ministry touches in my particular area, and where we're going to lead to. I'm going to give you some principles here, some things that I've learned just from my perspective that have helped Marcus and I and his team work better. And then I want you to ask every question under the sun. Again, I'm going to answer anything you want to ask. Okay, you can ask the most pointed question. There is nobody stopping me from answering. Like I said, most of our staff's on vacation, so I can say whatever right now without consequence, which is great. So here's where food services touches me and touches my area of ministry. If you were looking, you're right up there. There's a big building that's called our student center. The building way out there past the basketball hoops, and that building seats good 500 to 600 people, and it is called our student center. It's used for our students and college ministries, but it's used for a lot of other things too. We have a Brazilian service that meets in there on Sunday nights, and then every Tuesday night, one of the things that I do with the singles is a service called the Drive. And the Drive is just a gathering of young adults from all over Central Florida, 20s and 30s, that are coming largely from this church, but we get them from a lot of churches and from a lot of people that are coming from unchurched situations and everything. Worship service, Bible study. We all know we're all here because we believe in the ministry of food, and I can tell you something: the ministry of food gets people out a whole lot more. So once a month at the Drive, we do a catered dinner following the service, and we keep our people on site. On a normal Tuesday, they would go out to a restaurant together, and we send people out in droves. Sometimes as many as 200, but somewhere between 100 and 200 young singles are a part of that every Tuesday night. And once a month, we have a catered dinner together on site. Most of the time, our food service ministry provides that. Here's what I do. I make a phone call. I tell them my budget, which is usually way lower, and we'll talk about that later, than what they want it to be, but that's just the way a pastor works, right? And I say, this is what we're trying to do. They deliver it about 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. They've got a warmed, hot cart that's plugged into a wall. Our tables are set up with another area of ministry, so everything logistically has been set up, and all my people have to do is walk in, take out trays, put it on a table, and have serving utensils, and we're good to go for the service afterwards. It's a dream. I don't have anybody cooking. I don't have anybody putting on gloves and having to serve things. There are no lunch ladies involved. There's none of this stuff. I mean, it is all like ready to go for us. Another thing we do here that's under my area of ministry is called Prep for Marriage, our marriage prep program. And our marriage prep program here usually touches, on average, somewhere between 100 and 140 couples a year that come into our Prep for Marriage program. We run it on Wednesday nights, we run it on Sunday mornings. Wednesday nights go 2 times a year, Sunday mornings as well. We stagger the dates, and so we're pretty much running Prep for Marriage through the entire year, minus about 2 months during the summer. On Wednesday nights, as you know, it is hard to get to a church or activity or whatever, without having eaten. You can hit the Chick-fil-A, you can hit the drive-thru, wherever. But what we do is we give our couples a meal voucher, and they participate in our Wednesday night dinner program, which here is a hot catered dinner, and it's better food than my wife and I cook at home. Okay, so it's an easy choice for us that we eat here. But those couples are served by that dinner. On Sunday mornings, we don't do a breakfast, but we'll do pastries, we'll do orange juice, coffee. All of that stuff, again, is provided to us by the food service ministry. We do special events. One of the first events that I did once I was brought on permanent staff here was an event called the Marriage Show. Got a passion for just serving in marriage ministry, and so we did an event that had somewhere between 800 to 1,000 people right downstairs here, and full desserts, and Marcus was, his team worked miracles that night. They had every dessert under the sun, and our pastor, Pastor David, was part of kind of a talk show environment where, kind of late night talk show, Jay Leno, think that, Letterman kind of thing, where we just talked about marriage and had a great conversation about marriage. People got saved at that event. There were people that got into mentoring programs after that event and recognized that their marriages maybe were in trouble or needed some help, and we were able to plug them into that. These guys made that happen for me. We've done Super Bowl parties here before with our singles, where we put up big screens in the parking lot, show the game outdoors, and they've helped us get some of the sides and some of the meats and things like that we cooked for that. That was, last year I think we had 300 or 400 in attendance for that. When I do pastoral counseling and ministry contacts, every Sunday morning, and really, Ron will joke with you, that I don't pay rent here for their area downstairs, because I have an office literally right across the hall here that I'm in probably 25% of my week. When I'm in office hours, I'm usually sitting downstairs with people. I love to be with people. God made me to be with people. That's where I'm supposed to be. I figure if I'm in that office more than 25%, probably not doing my job. So I go downstairs and I use Ron's office, which is pretty large and has lots of tables and kind of looks like a cafe. And I sit down there and eat some really, really good food. I mean, I get in line with our people, that I'm sitting down with and just hearing where they are in their week and saying, I get the question all the time, what do you recommend to eat here at the cafe? My response, anything. I mean, anything's good. I've never had a bad meal at our cafe. You want Starbucks? We got Starbucks. Got that there. I do it during the week. I do it on Sunday mornings. On Wednesday nights, we've got our Wednesday night dinner that serves what we call ACTS classes here. That's the Academy of Christian Training and Service. It's just Wednesday night Bible studies that run here. And a lot of those things touch on marriage, touch on singles, just touch on general subjects that kind of touch people in my area. These guys, again, provide the dinners for that. Leadership development. There are boardroom meetings that happen around the church here where I sit down with life group teams and ministry teams, and these guys are providing boxed lunches for us and different things like that. So I don't need to tell you that we need food service ministry. And my ministry needs food service ministry. There's no way, the only opportunity that we would have to get food around this area is to go to McDonald's across the street. And I'm not doing that. I'm above that these days. I would just tell you that. That's a little joke, but nevertheless, it's everything for us. We need these guys. We need these guys to make things happen here at this church. And yet oftentimes, as you know, when we get in a church context, we act among ministries like we don't need each other. And I think I know why that is. I think I know why we can even move from that even to getting resentful of each other. Because we fail to understand and appreciate what each other does. By a show of hands, again, I just hope this is a healing time for you. Have you ever felt like your ministry was not appreciated in the context of your church? You can put up both hands if you want to put strong emphasis on that. Yeah, of course. Of course. Can I confess too? I've been on the other side of that where I haven't appreciated people like you serving in capacities like you're serving. I'm sorry. I am. And I think it's because we fail to understand what each other brings to the table and how we need each other. And when I met Marcus for that first time and I had the opportunity to step back and not have a flock, I think in retrospect, that time serving as an intern here on our staff, where I didn't have a group of people that I was responsible to and I had a little bit more time on my hands than the average person working on a church staff, gave me the opportunity to start to look at every ministry at this church and really to look at a church as a whole and look at kind of philosophically and see, man, this is why they don't click oftentimes. This is why there's division and disunity sometimes within church staffs. So I want to share with you for a few minutes just some principles that have helped me as I've kind of navigated this water and worked with Marcus and his team. And then we're going to have question and discussion time. Again, I promise you nothing's off limits. I want you to ask any questions. I want to be your insider today. The best that I can. I want to help you maybe understand everything that a pastor goes through and everything that a pastor's thinking. And then I want to hear from you, and maybe that would help me understand you better as well. I think that maybe one of the reasons Marcus picked me aside from our ministry connection is that what I do, I'm just kind of one of those people that's like the bomb that explodes, and I have like my hands in everything, and like God just made me high capacity. And so I like being in a lot of different things, and so I get to see a lot of different things that maybe, you know, where some of our pastors might be a little bit more siloed in what they do. I just feel like I'm all over the place, and I get to see a lot of how this church runs, and that's kind of fun. So anyway, the whole point here, because when we appreciate and understand each other, every food service team can partner with every pastor to effectively, creatively, and joyfully minister to their church and community. Let me say that again. Every food service team can partner with every pastor to effectively, creatively, and joyfully minister to their church and to their community. Here's 3 ways we can do this. First of all, understand financial pressures that pastors face. Corporately first, in a church budget, okay, budgeting is the worst time of the year. And you know this, okay? You guys know what it's like to have to present budgets and everything, but for a pastor, for somebody that's in an overseer position over a broad area of ministry and that has great vision, they have great dreams for the things that they want to do, budgeting is the worst time of year because you're sitting with people that oftentimes are very left-brain, type A personalities, and God bless them, we need them in the church. There's absolutely a place for them in the church, but it can be hard at times to present a vision to them. Sometimes they don't get it, and for a pastor, that can be the most discouraging thing in the world, to be told, no, we can't do this. And for pastors, ministry is the land of fishes and loaves. They live in that world. I mean, that is just who they are, and it's about making something out of nothing. They are asked to work miracles at all times. I had an administrator at our last church that I used to joke with her. I said, you're really in my opinion, you would be the executive pastor of this church. Because every time that the building had a leak, every time the air conditioning chiller went out, or things that were not budgeted items in our church, everybody looked at her and said, Beth, we just need you to make it work. And she always found a way to make it work. I don't know how she made it work, but she found a way to make it work. She was a miracle worker. She knew how to pinch pennies from one place to another and make it work. And we look at those people and go, you are my hero. Most pastors live with that tension all the time. We have to make things work. We've been given this task, and people don't want to hear the word no, and we don't want to hear the word no. We want to be able to carry our vision forward, but we have budgeting committees, or we've got limitations in our church finances that tell us that we cannot do these things. Second thing, pastors have to be very resourceful. They've got to learn how to stretch everything, and usually the ones that are the most resourceful are the ones that are the most effective. There are people on our staff here that maybe this is the only place that they've ever served. They think this is just it. This is normal. Okay, I don't know the size of churches you guys come from, but again, I love that I can bring the perspective in my own ministry of having worked in a very small church and having worked in a mid-sized church and worked in places where there was affluence and places that there wasn't, places where budgets were great and then there were times where they were lean. I've worked in all of those different situations there. And so when you've done that, you start to get kind of conditioned for a coming storm. The storm always comes at some point. It's going to have, how are you going to float through it? Or are you going to drown it is the question. and we have to ask. And I find that the ones that seem to have culture shock during times of lean are the ones that maybe never had that perspective and they've not learned how to be resourceful. So they have to adjust. And I would argue that a lot of burnout happens because of that very fact right there. When a pastor is told, you've got to be resourceful, and he doesn't know how to do it. Resourceful pastors don't say, well, we just can't do this. They say, how can I make this work? How can I use these circumstances, and in the midst of these circumstances, how can I accomplish this purpose? Resourceful pastors are looking for partners in resourcefulness. If you're a partner in resourcefulness, you will be the best friend of that pastor. You will have his ear at all times because you understand that he's having to stretch things. And if you're a partner in that stretching, if you're going to figure out how to be a part of the solution of making things work, you will be his hero. I understand. I think maybe the two greatest words that a pastor can hear from people in your position. And that's not to say, I understand and we're going to make this work for the budget that you want to make it work for. I'm not saying that at all. But just say, I understand right from the start. I understand the position that you're in. I understand the wall that you're up against. I understand that you're being asked to work miracles. And were it not for the Lord, and were it not for some God money right here, this is not happening. I understand that. The second area that I think that pastors face financial pressures is in their personal lives. In their personal lives. My last church was an affluent community, and I, as a youth pastor, left after 7 years. I've been there for 7 years, a little over 7 years actually, was loved by all. Church and our families were devastated when my wife and I left because things were going really well. But inside of us, we just felt that kind of holy discontent that stirred. We knew that God was kind of moving us on. And I finally got to a place where I would have said, I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. I don't have to tell most of you that that's usually the time it's, you're about to leave, you're about to go. And if not, you're usually in disobedience to God. So it was time for us to go. I'm not going to tell you the exact number that they were paying us when I left, but I can tell you this, if most of the church knew what it was, they would have said, how do you do that? That's like poverty. So I leave here, being the wise, resourceful person that I am, to take less money and to lose insurance to come on as an intern. Why do people do things like that? Because they're called.
That's right.
That's the only reason you do that. I mean, there's no logical sense otherwise, right? I mean, you do that because you're called. You take risks and you say, okay, I trust the Lord. I'm married with 2 kids at the time, making that decision. And my wife, she's just as crazy as I am, looks at me and says, let's do it. Okay, all right, let's do this. And so we ran, we did our thing. Did I leave that church, the last church, because of the money? No. Again, you're talking to a guy that lost that, kind of stuff. Salary went down for 9 months. Pastors live on faith. Now, of course, except for the ones that we see on late night TV at 11 p.m., that's looking for you to fuel their jet. I get that's different. Okay, I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the average pastor is not making a whole lot of money. Okay, church member might offer him a beach condo or something for the weekend. You thought this guy won the lottery. It's like most of them haven't had vacations in a long time. They're overworked. They love what they do, but they give themselves way too much to it. I'll tell you what I'm doing this afternoon. Here's our family vacations this year. We got to do a cruise this year, which is awesome for our 10-year anniversary. But we are, I'll be driving today through the night to Tennessee to some family property up there, and there will be about 20 of us in a house built for probably 8, for the next 7 or 8 days, and we love it. We're a close-knit family. We like getting sleeping bags everywhere and doing our things, but it's a road trip. This whole trip is going to cost us probably $300 in gas. That kind of thing. I mean, that's just kind of how we roll because we can't take the European vacation. We can't do all of those other things that many in our churches are getting to do. But we're okay with that because it's the life of the average pastor, and the average pastor is not bitter. He sees this as his call. Okay, sees this as his call. My wife and I would tell you that our family has been blessed every step of the way, even when we were paid next to nothing. We're not making bank here, but even when we were paid next to nothing, we would have told you that we are blessed, and we still are. So we have a different perspective, a resourceful one, a grateful one, a thankful one, but also a frugal one. We have a frugal perspective. We have to be. And so this carries over into how we manage our church budgets, and it carries over into how we call you up and say, I need you to do this, and it needs to cost this, and you're going, fat chance, it's not even possible, and you're going, yes, it is, because I live on faith in my home, and therefore I must do so at my church as well. You better make it happen, because unlike the government, we don't spend what we don't have, right? Is that the deal? Can I get an amen on that one?
Amen.
That's good. So this is the world of most pastors. They're dealing with financial pressures in the context of their ministry. They're dealing with financial pressures in the context of their own personal life. And the more you understand these financial pressures in both areas, the more you will understand the heart of a pastor. Why he doesn't spend, it's not that he doesn't value the things that you do most often. There are some people that are the exception to that. I'll concede that. But it's probably more so because the average pastor doesn't turn down a free lunch because if he doesn't turn down that free lunch, he'll never get to eat out. Okay, that's just a world that he kind of lives in. By the way, Marcus and Janae not too long ago did a remodel on part of their house. I don't know the extent of that, but I remember just seeing pictures on their Facebook of them doing stuff every step of the way, and I'm going, well, that's an interesting task for a food service guy to be doing. I didn't know Marcus had that skill. That may have been more Janae that was doing it. I don't know. You'll have to sort that out with him later. But I would tell you this: for the average pastor being resourceful usually learns some skills that are way outside of his ministry box. We got a lot of carpenters on this staff. There's some great woodworkers that just would say, man, that's the one thing I get to do that when I start, I can finish it and I can see the fruit from it. I remember the first house we bought. I bought the lawnmower before we even started looking for the house. Like, I couldn't wait to mow my own grass. So I've got the lawnmower, spent a ton of money on that thing, got the best one that I could, and finally started mowing. And so a month into living at this house, I've got a lawn service company that comes to me, and I'm mowing in the backyard, and the guy hands me a flyer and says, well, for X amount of dollars a month, we can mow your grass for you. And I said, you couldn't pay me that money to not do my own grass there. And he looked at me like confused. And I said, listen, you got to understand something. This is the one job in my life right now that when I start this thing, in about 45 minutes to an hour, I'm going to see what I did today. And I will see the finished product. Sure. Said, you can't take that away from me. Please don't take that away from me. I need that. I have the tools in my garage to do major and minor, well, semi-major and most minor repairs on our cars. In the first year of marriage, we had this ultra-reliable little my first car, 1991 Honda Accord. This is 10 years ago, so the car was already over, 10, 12 years, I guess, at the time when we got married. And within the first 2 months of marriage, we had a major issue with the car that it was like an $1,800 repair bill. Not at the dealership, I'm talking about the mechanic that undercuts the dealership. So major, bill right there, and we had some wedding money and everything, but that was it. And my wife and I, we had to pay the bill, and we started looking at each other going, we're useless. Like, we're that couple that doesn't even know how to change a light bulb without YouTube. Well, the problem was YouTube wasn't around then, right? So we figured we better learn how to do some of the things that we need to do. So we started to lean on people in our church, families. My dad, Shannon's dad, my wife, knows how to fix things. And we just started to learn those things from them. And we've calculated this over the years. I think that we're somewhere between $8,000 and $9,000 that we have saved now by doing some of those repairs in our 10 years of marriage. I can do major electrical and minor plumbing work. We've remodeled a bathroom before. We've installed wood floors. Can change lighting fixtures. I can put a roof on a house. I can do all of these things, and I'm a pastor. And most people look at pastors and say, well, you know how to do one thing. You know how to eat. You know how to preach. Maybe 3 things. You know how to tell me what to do when I don't want to know. What you want to tell me. Kind of thing. But I'll tell you, man, your pastors, the people that you serve under, probably have a lot of skills in their arsenal that you're not even aware of, and it all stems back to them having to learn how to be resourceful. So not only do a lot of pastors have to live on less, they have to learn to do more. We just figured we couldn't survive on those kinds of things for a year, and probably you can't either in your positions there. Okay, so we've learned how to be in that place. Dave Ramsey would probably be here patting me on the back if he were at this conference. He probably missed out for something that was larger, but not better, mind you. He should have been here. Many of us work in larger churches where our staffs are paid a little bit better than smaller churches. Okay, that's definitely the case for us now. I've certainly taken care of more of than I was at my last church. But when you have worked in these types of places and money is tighter, you tend to remember your roots. Okay, you remember that perspective, so you understand the financial pressures, and I would encourage you, know your pastor, know his personal financial pressures, know his ministry financial pressures. Go sit down with him and ask him about his budget, ask him about his ministry budget, ask him about the areas, that if he could dream where he would want to have more in there. Say, Pastor, man, if you had $5,000 extra dollars in your budget every single year, what would you spend that money on? I guarantee you, he's already got that money spent. He's already got big ideas and big plans and big visions, and it's probably good stuff. It's probably not remodeling his office to put a golf green in there. Are you with me? Okay, these guys know what they're doing, and they're usually, have really good hearts and everything. So, okay, here's the next point. So again, know your pastor's financial situation. Point number 2 would be this: understand the perspective on cost the average pastor has. Okay, let me clarify. The first time I saw the banquet menu pricing at our church, I freaked out. I freaked out and was in my head making accusations that, well, this is a profit industry, this is ridiculous. You want $22 for like a full thing meal per person for grilled chicken? What are the next words that come out of the pastor's mouth? I can get that for blank somewhere else. Which may be true, because pastors always speak the language of cheap, no matter what. Not necessarily because they're cheapskates, because they're trying to accommodate everyone. Going back to youth ministry days, I used to have a rule about the trips and events that we would do. Anything that we went on, I had to make it possible so everybody could go. Okay? The rich kids could go, the kids that didn't have much could go. Everybody had to be able to go in some form or fashion. That principle is good. It's good until you get youth pastors who take the rickety old 15-passenger church vans, you know, that have been retired for years and years and years from airport service, where they were already beyond, you know, their last leg. They've got rusty doors, bad brakes, and they don't have four-wheel drive, and the pastor will put kids in there and put luggage on top and drive the thing up in mountains and in snow and call it a ski trip. But see, he looks at it and says, by doing that, I saved $150 per kid that I don't have to pay to rent a bus. And so they try these things, but it's all totally unsafe, but all in the name of, I want to include everybody. I don't want to price somebody out of being a part of this particular event or this particular ministry. You know what it costs to charter a bus for 5 days, by the way? Talk amongst yourselves. Have fun with that one. So how do they think? Church van, free, right? More kids can go. Pastors are no different. They think the same exact way. They're afraid that if we do this event and we say it's going to be, you know, $15 a head versus the $5 they would love to charge, that nobody's going to show up and everybody's going to feel like they're going to be priced out. And so when you get the pastor that has the sticker shock for your banquet menu, understand that's where he's coming from. It's not necessarily, again, that he's devaluing the ministry that you're providing. It's that for him, he looks at it and goes, well, they could go to McDonald's, or they could go to Chick-fil-A and get, you know, a dinner for $5, and I don't want them to do that. I want them to be here with us, and how do we make that work? And we all know that, you know, they're forgetting some of the other costs. I had to learn, as I was working with Marcus, that, you know, that the menu pricing for banquets not only included the food, but it included the full service staff, which Marcus and his team provide, and they're amazing, who can make or break an event, mind you. Okay, we know that a bad food service staff can make or break an event. It can be a miserable experience, just as a bad waiter or waitress can be the make or break person for somebody's date night out, for a couple that's having a date. You know, you get bad service there, it ruins everything. You know, so you're forgetting that, forgetting set charges, forgetting cleanup charges, all of these things that pastors just assume, you know, the little green men come out of nowhere every single night and just do for free, you know, because they love the Lord. And you know, then they go back to being leprechauns during the day for kids' movies. I don't know how that works. You know what I mean? They assume these things. So let's be honest here. If Marcus charged, our Wednesday night dinner costs $6, I think, for adults and $4 for children. If Marcus charged the $12 to $15, if not more, per person that it probably takes to run Wednesday night dinners and not lose money, how many people do you think in this church would show up on those dinners? Do you think it would go up or go down? Go down, go way down. Because for my family, that would mean if it's $15 for an adult, and let's say $10 for kids, we're talking, the baby doesn't eat right now. Well, the baby eats, but the baby eats, you know, mama food. The baby doesn't eat this food, you know, but that's 2 kids, that's 2 adults, so we're talking 30, that's $50 for us to come eat here. That's what we pay to go to the movies. Little movie joke for you. Sorry. It would go down. It would go down. And so that's what a pastor thinks when they hear that kind of stuff. They go, we can't do that. Nobody will show up. It will defeat the purpose of doing this ministry in the first place. We forget sometimes Chick-fil-A and restaurants and stuff like that pastors compare you guys to. Pastors don't know that these guys deal in volume. A lot of these guys, I was a business major, so I understand supply and demand. That stuff makes perfect sense to me. For the average pastor, that wasn't their call. They weren't those guys. They were English majors. They were ministry majors, whatever it was. And so I get things like, you know, dealing in volume. I get that Chick-fil-A and other restaurants buy things in mass. And they buy things at prices that you guys could never get, even if you wanted to at your best. We understand things like, you know, those restaurants deal in standardization. Okay, you're not going to see a Chick-fil-A decorated for like a wedding reception tomorrow, and the very next day do a funeral, and then the day after that do a kids banquet. It's not going to happen. It always looks the same. The menus are always the same. The condiments always look the same. And yet you guys have to turn over and create themes and do different things that we don't factor in sometimes. And then finally, I think that they're forgetting, again, those setup charges, cleaning, all of that stuff, all these elements that go into an event. And Marcus had to sit down with me one time. We had a coming to Jesus moment with Marcus and Jeff. And Marcus was playing the role of Jesus in this particular incident. And basically had to sit me down and say, you need to understand all of the factors that go into this. It didn't mean that at the end of the conversation that I like the pricing. I still don't like the pricing. Okay, Marcus knows that. But I also understand this is where that pricing comes from. And so somehow, when I'm giving my attention and he's giving my attention, and we both have a little bit of grace for each other, we seem to find the happy middle ground to make our ministries work together. And so understand the way that your pastors view cost. Third thing would be this, final thing, we'll get some questions. Understand the creative role that you play. You are not just people who serve food. Can I just tell you that? You're not just hired hands that serve food. Don't ever let anybody sell you short for what you really do. Because I know your type, because I get to work with your type. And you know what your type helps me do? You help me think outside the box. You help me think resourcefully. You help me think creatively. You take my harebrained schemes that would never work, but seem so good in my mind, and you say, this is how we can do this better. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about thinking outside of this box? You help me do things more effectively, more efficiently, and more creatively. I look at our food services team and I say, you guys are just as much doing pastoral ministry as we are a lot of times, because you get this hospitality factor, you get this creativity factor, you get creating the environment for ministry to happen. Those are the things that you guys do. You do things way outside of the box. In fact, I think you probably get the least credit of any ministry in most churches. And again, I'm sorry for that. Okay? I am. I'm sorry for that. But you know what? You sit down with somebody, you sit down with a pastor, you sit down with a ministry leader, or you pastor, whoever, and start to share your heart and hear theirs. You might win an ally, and you might get somebody that finally understands the ingredients and the things that you do and your passions and your heart. And I would say that those are the key ingredients for ministries to work together and to appreciate what each other does and not grow resentful and not grow apart, but rather become effective team partnerships. And that's the goal, isn't it? I mean, that's why we do what we do. What does the Bible say? A house divided against itself will not stand. Of course not. So I get to work with probably, I mean, I'm sure you guys are wonderful and God bless you and everything, but I feel like we've got the greatest food services team in the world here, because I know these guys, and they're not just ministry partners for me, now they're friends. You know, people I get to spend time with. Last week, Marcus and I were up in Graceville, Florida, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's like the town that time forgot. Sorry if you're from there, by the way. And it was awesome. We were just serving. We were pressure washing houses together and painting and building decks and just serving in mission. It was a local mission trip. And Marcus and his team they weren't doing the food services stuff. There's a little, kind of podunk cafe at the Baptist College of Florida that was serving us food every single day, and we were just hanging out. And we were ecstatic, Marcus and I were, about 2 months ago when we looked at the list of people that were going, and we're going, you're going, your family's going, man, we love you guys. It's going to be awesome to spend time with you guys. We didn't talk ministry. We just hung out as friends. We have that relationship now. You develop that with the people on your staff, and I promise you, you're going to look forward to their phone calls and and getting to partner with them in the harebrained schemes that they raise up and they want to try in their churches, and you'll help them do it. You might be the very thing that pushes them over the edge to make it happen. So, any questions? I know there's questions. Ask me anything. That's all I've got to say. They told me I couldn't preach for 4 hours. I wanted to. You guys do. Is there anything you're just dying to know? Anything that, even about here, and how we do things here? The dirt on Jerry and Ron, I'm happy to tell you all that stuff. I got a whole file on those two.
How many's actually on staff for the kitchen?
I can't answer that, Jerry. How about, tell me.
We have 18 full-time people on not now during the summer, but about 26 part-time people, because a lot of people don't work during the summertime. And then we have about 60 on-call banquet servers, but we will use on a regular basis about 15 to 20, unless we have a really large event.
Jerry, what is your column? What do you do?
I'm the front of house manager, so like the cafe, school lunch, any banquets or weddings, all those fall under me. Basically, anywhere you see a guest visiting our church for a food service event, I'm in charge of that.
Oh, okay.
But Chef Mike kind of co-manages the front of the house with me a little bit.
Right.
He just dabbles in the front a little bit.
you actually pay for your meals?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
Do you really IOUs that you get boxes and just conveniently don't come out?
I told you, Ron asks me every time I have a meeting downstairs, he says, when have you paid your rent? I was telling him, I said, check's in the mail, you know, you gotta blame the postal service for that. That kind of thing. Yeah, I use the word, or I used the restaurant Chick-fil-A a lot, because I'm hopelessly addicted to Chick-fil-A. I love my Chick-fil-A. And what I tell you about that stuff is one of the reasons I love that restaurant is my family always has good experiences when we go there. Okay, I seem to be like the epitome of bad experiences. If something can go wrong at a restaurant, it happens to us all the time. But we're not complaining. We'll eat food. Like they could bring out, you know, and I even like fish. Like I could order a steak and they bring out fish. I'll eat it anyway. I don't care. You know, it doesn't bother me so much. But just things that just go wrong. And, you know, sometimes we just get forgotten. We place an order and like 2 hours later, the food's not there, and you know, it's like we disappeared or something. And I'm going, we're still here. The food, oh, you're still here? Yeah, no, I haven't eaten. So that stuff happens to us. But it seems like it never happens to us. And our family's always in a rush. We're always, you know, on the go somewhere, and it never happens to us at Chick-fil-A. It could happen today because we're going to eat there for dinner, but let's pray that doesn't. And what's cool about that is I look at their staff. Their culture of hospitality is absolutely through the roof. I mean, you can walk in. I've had some bad days. I think Publix is pretty good about this. I don't know where you guys are coming from, but Publix is a big grocery store in our area. There are guys. I've had some bad days, you know, where just stress and craziness, and we walk into one of the, you know, it's two places, and there's others, of course, and the day is just redeemed by a person's smiling face, by them just greeting and welcoming. And I've always found too that in both of those places, both Publix and Chick-fil-A, their employees, at least the ones I go to, seem to ask meaningful questions. You know, they don't just ask the stuff that you know is a script thing, because I'm a pastor, I have to do that. You know, we know what small talk is. And we know that in ministry. We know what it means to have a conversation with somebody where we've been absolutely the opposite of authenticity, you know? And just had some great experiences there. And I would tell you that even the hourly staff that works with our food services ministry downstairs at the cafe, I may not hang out with these guys. They may not be friends that my wife and I are getting together with on a weekend. Some are. But for every single one of them, they know me. And, well, I wouldn't say every single one, at least the ones I encounter, they know me by name, and they do that same thing that those employees at the Chick-fil-A and the Publix do. They just change the day. They have smiling faces. They're welcoming. And I promise you this, they do that for me. They're doing it for our people that come in too. They're serving as ministers. I mean, they're hospitality people. They're evangelists in that way. So it's awesome. Yeah.
I just want to mention, you talk about Chick-fil-A. We have a Chick-fil-A in Ocala, where I come from.
Yeah.
And they're members of our church. And they just finished up a WinShape camp for children, and it's been outstanding. They have scholarships for children. We helped with one little girl to get her scholarship, and that was hurting. But just mainly, I like working with them, but mainly they gave us personally a lot of kitchen equipment, and you know as well as I do, kitchen supplies are very expensive. They had moved their location, and they gave us a bunch of really nice stuff, and I sent them a really nice letter to show our appreciation. We keep on getting more stuff and more stuff. And the father of the one that owns a Chick-fil-A, he comes back and volunteers to help with our dishes.
Awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
We had WinShape here, was it last week?
Last week.
Last week.
Yeah.
Did the same thing too. Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Good people.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually a Catholic church.
Are you really?
And I grew up with these children.
Awesome.
And, but at our church on Wednesday nights, we have a family night.
Okay.
There's a cap. Because we have, I mean, our minister of music alone has 7 kids. So.
Jerry, listen, if you
You
create
just-
that, I'll have more kids. All right,
One of our
yeah.
workers has
We'll
8
have more
children.
kids if you will make that happen.
But there's just a cap for families, large
Cool.
families, so
Cool.
that's paid for.
Interesting. That's cool. Thanks for sharing. Which church are you from?
Jonesboro First
Jonesboro. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, very cool.
I just have one question, and
Yes, ma'am.
at the beginning, you were talking about using food service for different ministries.
Yes.
Okay. Does the church pay for those?
We have budgets. It's really a transfer line item with us. And so yes, it comes out of my budget to, you know, into theirs. And our church loves that because it's, you know, it's staying within the, you know, in-house. And that was another thing that I remember when I started to use my resourcefulness to say, well, I can bypass food services and I can do better. And we'll still buy our water bottles every once in a while from Walmart, you know, but a little confession there. But I was getting chastised for that from our finance team, because they're going, you gotta understand something, every dollar that stays here, and I, you know, and I was like, I kinda get that, but I'm like, guys, but I'm still, you know, I'm doing better, I'm stretching money here. And that's just one thing that I think that church staffs need to do a great job. I still don't know that I fully have a great clear answer as to why that needs to happen, but I at least know that money is staying in-house, and so there are some good things about that. Whatever you can do, and work with their, finance teams at your church, whatever you can do to make that crystal clear to the people who would use your services, I think it will do well for them, because again, they're still thinking that mentality of, and remember, for them it's stewardship. They're not trying to save money just because they wanna, spite you. They're trying to save money because they can stretch everything and do more. I mean, that's the whole goal there. So when we explain to them exactly, that you may not necessarily be saving money by going outside for this reason, the more clear that you can make that, I think the better the win is. Yeah, question?
It's easier to track the money.
Yeah, very true.
Where the person that has the ministry can go back from last year and say, well, last year, it was this much.
Right.
I can probably do a little bit more this year, or a little bit less, and then go talk to the food services director and say, we did this. Where is it? It just comes out of the kitchen supplies. It's a little harder to track for the ministry leader.
I agree with that. It's good work. Yeah.
With everything that you talked about, Jeff, somebody's got to make the first move on getting the pastor and us together, and I think it should be food services. And there's a way to get your pastor's attention, and I'm sure you'll agree. Offer to buy him lunch. They ain't gonna turn down free lunch. That'll get him there, and he'll find room on his calendar if you offer him lunch. I don't think we offered you lunch.
No, you didn't, and I'll be
He's in line.
But those
Mr.
two
Ron
agree,
has to
I
come
think
with me that day,
we
so
should
you gotta buy
make
his
the,
too.
with the pastor's schedule, I think we should make the first move.
I agree.
When you say pastor, you mean not your head pastor, but pastor.
Any pastor.
Ministry leaders, and anybody that's using you, really, is,
Okay.
I would say.
Probably ministry
Yeah,
leaders, okay.
Sure.
Our senior pastor would never make the call to order food.
Right, of
somewhere.
course.
No,
Of course.
I didn't think so, okay.
If everybody can't hear the question, would you repeat it?
I would.
please? Thank you.
Depends on what the question is.
I
It's
didn't
not your
ask
question?
no,
Okay.
but I'm saying,
Got
we
it.
don't hear
You got it,
the
of course.
question, we just hear the answer.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Of course.
I don't know if I have a clear answer.
Yes.
What I'm saying is this, let's say if I'm over women's ministry, and I want to have a meeting, and I want to serve food at that meeting, am I and the people who are participating in women's ministry purchasing food from food service, or is the church, am I saying to the church that they are actually paying for the food? Paying for the food, you understand what I'm saying?
Are you talking about just placing the order in the first place, just to get,
Now, I guess what I wanna know is, does every ministry have a budget?
Yes.
And in that budget, they have monies allotted for food that they use to purchase food from food service?
Correct.
Or do they have to raise their own funds? Does the ministry have to raise their own revenue to pay for food for their meetings or whatever?
For us, I mean, I think that's a church unique question there, but for us, we do have budgets for that, we have line items in there. And, those are always, there's gotta be some elasticity to those, okay, because things change every single year, and people change that are leading ministries and stuff, so, I always like to say that if somebody new is coming into a ministry context, especially in a bigger church, I think it takes 1 to 2 years for them to figure out how money gets spent, and they need to track that stuff, and then, so there's gotta be a little grace on the front end. But ideally, at least in our context, we have budgets for that.
The budget has to be approved, right? I mean,
Correct,
yeah.
of course, yeah, and it always gets cut, we always ask for way more than we're ever gonna get, we know that, so that's just part of the, give and take, so, yeah.
Now, okay, I know like with my ministry, they have their budgets and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But with you, does any of that, those revenues, okay, what, I know the money is in the church, but does any of those revenues, are they, when they pay you for doing a job, are you receiving any of those revenues realistically? I'm just saying, or they just channel
All
back
they're
into the
doing
church
is
account?
moving numbers
They're just
from one
moving
account to
numbers.
another. They don't
So
actually
how do
give
you-
him money and he gives us money, it's all
Right.
moving.
Okay, so you have a budget as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm just trying to find out how, in my wildest mind, how to begin, because our ministry, okay, it's like about 35 active.
Okay, sure.
And, which is a large ministry, and they have a nice budget, but, we don't charge them for Tuesday night. My pastor has this thing that he just wants to give it away. We do college students when during school time,
Cool.
they feed
them on Sundays so they can have a hot meal.
Sure.
And tons of things. I mean, every day of the week, look like they're doing, somebody's doing meetings, Christian Ed department, whatever.
Sure.
But we never charge for anything. And I'm like, okay.
I'm
'cause
gonna
I
set the position over here.
No, but no, I wanna give
Can
my
I come to
people
your church and
raises.
still work here?
No.
Yeah,
I
I hear
wanna
you.
give my people raises.
Yeah.
You know, because they work a lot.
Yeah.
They work a lot. I'm here and I got 3 of my main people are back home and they got funerals today, tomorrow, Saturday.
Yeah.
They got a major event Saturday, you know, so I would like to just increase that. But if I don't see the revenues, how am I gonna increase it?
That's a conversation for your finance team.
Yeah.
I'll say this,
They don't wanna hear
unfortunately.
me.
Of course, well, but
But
they
seriously,
do what
I
it
need
means
to talk
recovering
to
some of those funds, yeah, but I would talk to them first, and I would just encourage you that, and I don't have to tell you this or anybody else in this room, y'all know this, anytime we make change in the church, people don't like it. Okay?
Right.
You know that.
Okay.
You know, anytime a price goes up, whether it's a small amount or a big amount, you know, it's always met with some kind of resistance, you know, initially, but I also found that people are remarkably resilient. Okay, and it sometimes takes some people 2 years, sometimes it takes them 2 days, but they will adjust and they will get acclimated to the, you know, to the new changes here. Now, it's probably wise to take baby steps in the changes that you make, and so I'm not suggesting that if your costs are $5 a person for this stuff on Tuesday nights and you've been eating that the entire time, that you start charging that right away, maybe you move up incrementally, but that again is a finance question, you know, right there, and they can talk you through models and the best schools of thoughts. But it sounds like your church has, maybe that's a heart, they've got a real heart for using that as an outreach, and so maybe.
I think the path that he came from, he just wants to, you know, cause
Right.
you know, I don't think they pay him a salary because he's an author too, so.
Okay.
You know, but, which is good, you know,
of course.
but I don't wanna be the only one to make money, I want my staff to make money too. I don't want, you know, my heart goes out, you know, cause I'll take resources from myself sometime and just write a check out, to give them extra.
Sure.
You know, you don't wanna keep doing that, cause that's not realistic. My husband told me I can't.
I know. You know, as people who work on church staffs and manage teams and manage people and then manage budgets, I mean, I do believe that one of the callings of a church staff member is that, you know, the people that are serving under you, you've got to take care of them. You've got to be their advocate and fight for them. Now, with limits, you know, of course, I can tell you, I'll just give you an example of that. I had a girl at my last church, I didn't have an administrative assistant. Now I have one that my life doesn't run without her. I mean, I don't even think I know the password to my calendar. Like, she keeps all that stuff now, which is great. But at my last church, I didn't have that. And so when my wife was, let's say 2005, and my wife told me we're pregnant, we're having a baby, and I'm already running at a crazy fast pace, and we had a bunch of events coming up, we were moving towards summer, which for us was just, I mean, I was gone 35 days in an average summer on trips and camps and things like that. But the church, well, basically one of our volunteers stepped up, who was working at an elementary school, but said I could come in for 2 hours every day after school, or at least 4 days a week, you know, and I'll give you that time to run admin for you. And she was phenomenally organized. And so this girl did this for us for almost 2 years. You know, it just gave us that kind of time because it was her heart, it was her joy. Well, you know, I started to see that it was wearing on her after 2 years, and regardless, I wanted to take care of her. So don't think for a second I didn't march into our finance committee and say, listen, proven track record, this person is saving my life right here, you know, and we need to take care of her. And they were glad to, you know, step up and do that. And I demanded an amount. I said, this is it. And I was in my mind thinking, I'm walking if this doesn't happen. I'm just kidding, not that far, you know. But I think there's a time and a place where we've got to put ourselves on the line for the good of others, because I don't think it honors God when we take advantage of people either. Now, in ministry, again, you know, you're dealing with people that largely feel called, and so they're going to figure out ways to make people work. But even if it's small amounts of money, and we didn't get a huge sum, you know, for her for a salary, but we got her something. You know, even if it's something, it's the greatest token of appreciation to say, I'm fighting for you. You know, I've got your back. I'm with you in this, and I just, again, I feel like that honors God. I really do. And I grew up in that. I grew up in a church where our executive pastor was very clear to our congregation. You know what? This year we're giving the pastor a raise because he and his family, we need to take care of them. It was never, you know, met with any resistance because it wasn't excessive. You know, but he would just preach that. You know, this executive pastor, who by the way is a volunteer and was a finance guy, was an accountant in the city. You know, basically said, I'm running numbers here, guys, and beyond the numbers, you know, this is a stewardship thing. You know, how we take care of our people is a reflection to the world. We don't want our pastors living in poverty. He's pouring out, ministering to you. Let's at least take care of the basic needs. And if we can do that, you know, so I think that we have a place to fight for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I have a situation. I came up with a thought and idea. I'm hoping it's from the Lord.
Okay.
In our ministry, I was talking to one of the deacons, and one thought came to another and all that.
Sure.
And I was kind of disturbed. My husband is in the prison ministry, and I see a lot of young people getting into pregnancy rate in the high school is enormous, and there's a lot of things going through my head. And I was talking to this one deacon where he was dealing with a school, not dealing with children that were juvenile delinquents, but girls that were maybe from a dysfunctional family, whatever. And I said, you know, these young ladies, they're gonna be wives and mothers someday. And some of them don't know from cooking, like from a microwave or whatever, you know. They don't know from nothing how to be a wife, how to serve their children healthy food, and so on. And even with housekeeping and all that type of stuff. You know, how about if I took some of these girls each week, like on a Wednesday night dinner, and brought them in my kitchen and start teaching them the basics.
Does this sound like something you guys?
And,
like a ministry we're doing already?
and the deacon's eyes, they lit up because he was involved with the school.
Sure.
So, and then I happened to talk to our minister, the main head, and he said, wow, that is a great idea. And the thing is, with talking with people, with the ones that work in my kitchen and all that, I want to help, I want to do. They've been wonderful. But from this, when I'm going back, we didn't do anything so far because it's all camps all this month.
Right.
Who would I approach first?